Alright, this is John Cole with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. I have a friend on the show today, Craig Sommers, who actually wrote a book called The Raw Food Bible. He's been a raw foodist for many years, although he doesn't eat maybe 100% nowadays, but he still leads a very healthy lifestyle, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show today. You know, I've met many people over the years on our plant-based raw food diet, and some people come and go. And some people maybe, in my opinion, don't do it the most intelligently and don't continue to learn, evolve, grow, and change to become as healthy as you can. So that's why I want to bring Craig with you guys, to you guys today, so he could share some of his tips that he's learned on his literally 25-year journey of eating a plant-based raw food, predominantly, diet. All right. So thanks, Craig, for coming out.
Awesome. I'm really happy to be here and to share some of these things with you. Of course, I can't share everything that I know, and I wouldn't even be able to think of all the things, because some things you just, as they come up, you think about them. So I just put together a few things that maybe aren't so commonly talked about that we could hit on.
Before you get in that, Craig, though, I know who you are, but my viewers don't. So introduce yourself, and I know you're a naturopathic doctor, and you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm into much more than just the food aspect of the whole lifestyle, which that's the word for it, lifestyle. So I don't hold a cell phone up to my ear. I make sure I get enough sleep every night. I try to lead a low stress lifestyle. Many different aspects are equally as important as what you put in. So saying that, I just want to emphasize one thing. Years ago, several of the top raw foodists got together and they agreed that if you're eating at least 80% raw, you call yourself a raw foodist.
Right, all right.
So, it's very hard to do 100% raw, and perhaps not even necessary. Like back in the old days, you used to say cooked food is poison. Yes, some of it can be, but if it's healthfully prepared, low temperature, cooked, so forth, not deep fried, so forth. Some of these foods could really be healthful, even though they've been prepared with some heat. Some foods you just can't eat unless they're prepared with heat, like lima beans would be poisonous, so those have to be cooked. And we want to eat as varied a diet as possible, so that would be tip number one. If you're eating the same foods every day, I found myself doing that with breakfast. I was eating similar or sometimes the same thing every day. And I realized, hey, we really need more variety in that. Variety is not only the spice of life, but it's the key to getting all these different ingredients. And secondly, no matter how well and how varied the diet is, there's still a high probability, I would say, that we can run into some nutritional deficiencies. So I've been using two different labs, SpectraCell, their micronutrient analysis, and recently Vibrant America has come on the scene, and they have a micronutrient analysis. And even though I'm doing all these things, I'm spending lots of time getting the best food that I can, I still ran into, I'm low in this one and I'm low in that one. And sometimes we do need to get certain foods that are higher in different nutritional profiles or even some supplements to get those, ratios on our nutritional tests to be optimal.
Cool. So I'd like to add, I know a lot of you guys may be into raw foods all the way, and you're like, cooked food's always bad. So I would agree somewhat with Craig, but I don't want to give myself a scapegoat just to eat cooked foods just because, right? So what I'll say about that is this: I have incorporated some heat processed foods that I wouldn't otherwise be eating raw. So that's a very important distinction for me anyways, and what I believe. Like mushrooms, you could eat them raw, according to Paul Stamets, which is known as the mushroom expert guy.
Carcinogenic.
Right, you shouldn't probably eat a lot of mushrooms raw if you do want to eat them, and if you want to really get the benefits out, they should be heat processed. So that's one of the foods I eat. Now, on the other hand, I'm not going to sit there and steam my kale because I could eat kale raw, or actually for me, better yet, I prefer to juice my kale and juice it to break open the cell walls, get the nutrients, and make them available for me instead of cooking, which will break open the cell walls, but also degrade some of the food at the same time. And the final point I'd like to make on eating cooked foods is, if you guys do choose to eat cooked foods, that's up to you guys, and I'll never tell you guys, what you should do. But I will say I want to encourage you guys to eat nutrient-dense cooked foods if you are cooking your foods. And as you'll learn with Craig, he'll be sharing with you guys, there's some ways of heat processing your food that are way better than others. And actually, if I remember, I'll put a link down below to a video I did with Craig many years ago, actually, one of the best ways to heat process your food. All right, so Craig, so let's move on.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of cooking, well, let's talk about steamed versus boiled. So some things are just more easily digested steamed. So you get your cruciferous vegetables, which are wonderful. And I used to eat a lot of raw broccoli and raw cauliflower, but at some point they just don't digest as well. So we don't boil the crap out of it, but steaming a little bit, I think, can make some of these fibers, like the stems especially in broccoli, we slice them really thin, steam a little bit, and they seem to digest really well. And I don't believe that steaming those foods, it really destroys them. It may reduce some of the nutrients that are heat sensitive, but typically I can't eat a big bowl of raw broccoli, but I can eat a big bowl of steamed broccoli if I want to get a lot of broccoli in, and steaming it is not bad. And steaming it, of course, is better than boiling it. A lot of times you put things in water like squashes, potatoes, so forth, especially if you cut them up, a lot of nutrients leak into the water, so you see the water turn colors. So if I ever do cook anything in waters like in that video, I try to keep it completely intact, not peel it, not cut it, keep it completely intact. And you do lose a little bit of nutrients in the water, but not as much as if you cut it all up and then you boiled it. One thing that a lot of people like in this country and all around the world, we crave, some people crave, is salt. I see people dumping a lot of salt. What I recently found out is that a lot of these processed salts have been dosed with fluoride. They're actually adding fluoride to processed salts. So of course, we need salt. You can't really live a healthy life without some. So you want to have the less processed stuff, like the real salt or the Himalayan salt, things that have just been, they put them in pools and they evaporate out the water, and then they gather up the salt, the Celtic salt, this kind of thing, and not the stuff that's been processed, especially because of the fluoride they're adding now. We know that's a neurotoxin, and that can have a lot of problems.
So Craig, I want to say something real quick. I believe salt is not a health food. Number one, salt technically isn't even a food, so that statement is correct, just because it's not a food technically. And the other thing I believe is that we can get the majority, or we can get actually all the sodium we need from our food, so we really shouldn't have to add additional salt. But should people want to add additional salt, I would definitely agree with your comments. And the salt I like is actually called Seasons 90, and it actually has a lower sodium content by a little bit than most other salts out there.
Okay. Another thing that a lot of raw foodists tend to eat a good amount of is dried fruit.
Yeah.
And dried fruit is sticky, and it tends to stick to your teeth and rot your teeth out. And we all know sugar is bad for us. Sugar can block vitamin C receptors, depress our immune system. So people think they're going away from white sugar and they're going to eat a lot of dried fruit, but I really don't believe that's a healthy thing. And if you are going to eat dried fruit, I think soaking it is better. The more dried it is, it seems like the more sticky and sticks to your teeth. I had a few dried tart cherries I was sampling this morning with my breakfast. I cut up a lot of fruit, and I ate those tart cherries, and then I ate other fruits and some other things. And an hour later, I noticed I ran my tongue over my teeth, and I felt the tart cherry pieces still stuck to the tooth. And nobody wants tooth decay, so I would be careful of the amount of dried fruit.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Actually, you want to not eat excess dried fruits. We should eat fresh fruits, they're the best. But Craig, I want you to look into freeze-dried fruits. It's not as sticky because of the way it's processed. It more dissolves, but it still can stick and adhere to your teeth. And I'm not going to say, we should be eating freeze-dried fruit in any large quantity either.
Okay, so another thing I found out recently that I think a lot of people don't know. So this isn't for strict raw foodists. If you're a raw foodist, you don't have to listen here. But if you're eating things packaged in plastic, so number one, like tofu, which I never eat, or even hummus, which I mostly don't eat unless we make it ourselves. But they actually are putting those foods into plastic, and then those plastic containers roll through the pasteurization or go right into the oven on the assembly line.
Wow.
And they're pasteurizing them in the plastic. You could go online and YouTube, look at how it's made videos, and they have one how it's made on tofu, and that's where I saw that. But also, we were just at a Natural Products Expo, and I talked to some of the people who make the hummus. They made this shelf-stable hummus that doesn't need refrigeration, no plastic tub. Well, how do you make that? Well, that's how. They heat the crap out of the thing in the plastic, seal it while it's hot. So it's not just BPA. You know, don't think, oh, it's BPA free. There's probably at least 200 chemicals in there that are toxic to us that we accumulate over the years. And then depending on how your body's own detoxification system works, you know, will tell you how good you're going to be able to detoxify those chemicals so they don't cause problems down the road, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, causing who knows what kind of health problems.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say let's avoid eating processed foods. Anything that comes in a package, right? You guys should need to buy the whole foods, grow your own food, buy in bulk, make your own hummus, you know, at home instead of buying it pre-made.
So one thing that I really like to recommend to people, most people can handle this. Some people have problem with histamine reactions. And I know one person in particular who, if she eats these foods, she gets migraine headaches.
Wow.
So these are fermented foods.
Oh.
We all know sauerkraut, kimchi, or naturally fermented pickles. Wonderful for our microbiome, which is our friendly bacteria and all that. We're finding out more and more how certain strains are related to certain diseases. There's a fairly new test on the market called the Gut Zoomer by Vibrant America. I'm really into this test now. And they talk about all the different strains, a lot of them that you've never heard of, I'm sure, not just acidophilus and bifidus and so forth, ones you might see on yogurts, thermophilus, but man, all these different strains that you can't even buy supplements in that will end up being in these fermented foods. And they actually show you on this test the diseases that they can lead to, if you have not enough of them or if you have too much of them. And the way well, first of all, they only put these bacteria on the test if they have good published studies. And they rate each one between 1 and 5 stars. 1 meaning they only have a few published studies, and then up to 5 would mean they have the most published studies relating either deficiencies to some kind of disease or overgrowths of it, I should say, to other kinds of disease. And they actually list those diseases. So we're living in the future right now. These tests are amazing. And another thing that this lab is doing, they have these food zoomer tests. So for instance, nut zoomers or zoomers for the beans, different kinds of beans, chickpeas, lentils. I know I was eating a lot of sprouted raw chickpeas, a lot of sprouted raw lentils. And for some people, there are particles in there that will not actually help you, but can actually cause a lot of problems.
Wow.
So they have zoomer tests for all these, including, like I mentioned, the raw nuts and seeds. We think we're doing ourselves a favor, but if we're still experiencing symptoms, maybe you want to take one of these tests and see exactly what it's doing.
Wow. I mean, this is why I have Drake on the show, because he's researching all the latest stuff. And I'm learning from him right now, as you guys are.
These zoomer tests, right now they're charging like $199
Oh, that's not bad.
for them. That includes the blood draw, everything. And if you take a bunch of them, they give you like buy 3, get 1 free.
Oh.
It's cutting edge stuff, for sure. And what they actually say, one more thing about it, is you can tell 10 years in advance to developing a food allergy.
Wow.
It's called a food sensitivity now, but their research that this lab and a lot of researchers have done showing that 10 years in advance of you developing real symptoms, they can tell in these tests, in their blood tests, the blood draw tests.
So are these accurate, or this, like, how do you know this is like for real?
Okay, so for instance with the wheat zoomer test, which doesn't test just gluten, it tests all these different things that are in wheat. They are claiming over 99% accuracy rate, which is, you know, about the best you're going to get. And I believe it, I really do. I've seen a lot of this research. I've done these tests on people. I believe it's true. So.
Yeah, I guess it can't hurt. I mean, if you find out you're allergic to something and you stop eating it, you feel better. Like,
I've ran these tests on some people, and it's very interesting, the results. They also have them if you're an animal food eater for fish and eggs and dairy. So you can see if you're eating those foods, if they're going to cause a problem for you or not.
So have you seen any commonalities, Craig, when you've tested people in the past, like what common foods might be allergic to, cause allergens in a wide variety of people?
Well, I can't
That's
say
surprising.
I can't say I've done a wide variety of people. Like, these tests are fairly new. My account with the lab is only a year old. So I have seen some very interesting things since I've been doing this, but I haven't done enough people to really, make
See patterns.
yeah, a pattern in my own mind. But it's very interesting. Most people that I have done already knew it. They already had a feeling about it. That's why they're running the test. So they weren't surprised. But I'm sure that it would surprise some people, when these things pop up.
Cool. And the other thing I'd say is, listen to your body. I mean, that's so important. If you eat something and it just doesn't feel right, maybe you want to take a break from eating that, and see how you feel.
So as far as healthy eating tips, which we were trying to focus on in this video, one of my ones highest up on the list is getting locally grown and as fresh as possible. Because of course, if it's locally grown, you can get it from the farmer very soon after it's picked. We all know that the nutrient levels decrease over time. And even better than that, try to grow some stuff in your own garden. I know John has a gardening channel. And even if you don't grow stuff, you can find weeds and different plants growing in clean waysides that are probably even more healthy than the organically grown produce that you're getting in the markets. You can pick it fresh and eat it within minutes or hours after you pick it. Like thistles.
Yeah.
Thistles, as far as I know, all around America are edible, but they have these horrible little spikes. So we have them growing all over our property. We go out and we pick a few and we juice them. You get a little bit pokey. You can wear gloves if you want. Pokes aren't really that bad. But wow, they're so healthy. We all know that milk thistle seed, extract, so good for your liver. So wild foods. Of course, everyone knows dandelions. Yeah. They're all over the place.
And you could eat your lawn if you don't spray it. You could put it through your juicer and juice it on up, or if you want to chew it on up and spit out the fiber and swallow the nutrients in there. And the other thing, of course, is grow your own sprouts at home. You guys don't need a yard, a space. You could do it in a jar, a bamboo basket, a sprout bag, or buy some complex machine and waste your money.
Okay, so another healthy eating tip. This would go mostly for people who eat some cooked food, but for grains, as far as grains are concerned. Like, I know I'm big into oats. So you could buy oat groats that haven't been steamed. You could soak them and sprout them. But if those oat groats aren't raw,
heat processed or sterilized.
Organic was the word I was going to say here. I'm a little spaced out this morning. If they're not organic, what they're doing to oats these days is they're spraying them with glyphosate
for curing.
For curing, exactly. Right. Now, you may say, all right, a little bit of glyphosate, it's not all that bad. Well, new research is showing now that glyphosate is destroying the blood-brain barrier.
Wow.
So the blood-brain barrier is something in our bloodstream that prevents particles that are flowing through our bloodstream from getting in the brain and causing damage. So it's like a screen. Picture a screen on a window that keeps out mosquitoes and gnats and all those things that annoy the crap out of you if you're in your house. Well, just imagine that screen starts to get holes in it. And that's what glyphosate supposedly does, and I do believe that it's true. I've seen a lot of studies on this. So those particles or those holes in the screen get bigger, particles get into the brain that aren't supposed to be there and start causing memory problems, all kinds of cognitive problems. So I'd be careful with that. And another thing that's supposed to have some effect on the blood-brain barrier, just in general, without the glyphosate or anything else, is gluten in general. We already know that gluten's connected to intestinal permeability. So you could take the gut zoomer, or you could take the wheat zoomer from these There's Vibrant America, which will actually tell you about your own gut permeability. They have tests now to tell you if your gut is leaky or not. But another good reason not to eat gluten or to avoid it most of the time is because it can end up causing a leaky blood-brain barrier.
Wow.
And once again, cognitive problems.
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage you guys, whenever possible, to buy organic. It might be hard to buy organic produce near you, but usually you could get organic grains near you. They're a lot more easy because they don't spoil as quickly, and they can sit on a shelf, so the retailer's not going to lose literally, money if they don't sell. And that being said, I've also seen research that some even organic produce can be treated with glyphosate, or non-organic produce can be treated with glyphosate after harvest as well. And so I would encourage you guys, once again, try to eat as much organic as possible, but, once again, don't be scared of eating fruits and vegetables if you can't afford organic or can't buy it, because they're still healthier than basically anything else in the grocery store.
So maybe the last thing I'd like to bring up here, which maybe is not talked about enough, is the omega-6 oils. So if you're someone that's going out and buying a lot of packaged food like hummus, if you look in almost all this packaged food, you're going to see sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, yada 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 oil. Forget about the problems with, even if it's organic, all these oils are very high in omega-6. So omega-6 oils make what's called prostaglandins that promote inflammation. So older people now are having a horrible time with arthritis, and even the cognitive problems can result from inflammation in the brain. And it's hard to get enough omega-3s. Some people can eat all the flax and chia and the omega-3 rich plants, but because of their DNA, they don't have enough of an enzyme called delta-6 desaturase to turn those omega-3s into EPA, DHA. And those end products, the EPA, DHA, are very, very important for us, especially for our brain and so forth. But they talk about a ratio. Everyone's talked about it for years, but most people have like 20 omega-6s to 1 omega-3, and that's way off. It's going to promote a lot of inflammation. If you have aches and pains in your body, it's just going to make them worse. If you have cognitive problems from inflammation in your brain, it's just going to make it worse. So watch those omega-6s. Try to avoid them as much as you can. We do need omega-6s. We just are having too much as a society.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, I've known about this for a long time. Nix the 6 is one of the campaigns I heard many years ago. And so just you want to, get rid of oils. That's one of the main things. And just processed foods in general will give you high 6s. And that's the other thing I try to do in my diet is, when I'm making a salad dressing with any kind of nuts, especially almonds and sunflower or sesame, they're super high in omega-6s. Put a tablespoon of flax or maybe even a little bit more in the dressing to kind of help compensate for the high 6s. That being said, also, I don't want to, just rely on my body that it is properly making its, EPA and DHA. So I irregularly supplement with, DHA fish oil. Actually, the best brand I found out there was the Sun Warrior, actually.
Yeah, but it's not actually fish oil.
Yeah, sorry. It's algae oil.
So what I've heard is that fish, if you take them and start growing them in fish farms, that the omega-3 content is very low or nil. And when they're in the wild, it's high because the omega-3s are made by algae in the wild. So the smaller critters in the ocean eat the algae and are eaten by the larger fish and the larger fish and the larger fish. So these large fish are good sources of the EPA, DHA, not because they make them in their body, because they accumulate them from eating the algae that was eaten by the...
And they're bioaccumulators. They're bioaccumulating.
Which gets us to the point of bioaccumulation.
And toxins.
So you've got, heavy metals, all these different arsenic, mercury, we've got PCB and dioxins and all these plastic chemicals now. They're finding nanoplastic particles in all the fish. If you're a fish eater from the ocean, you've been eating nanoplastic particles. Hands down, that's shown in just about every test that they do. So these algae oils are grown in farms, And
some of them we don't know about all of them.
well, the
most
ones
of them
that I
think.
recommend,
Yeah,
like
right.
the Sun Warrior one is grown
Yeah,
in the
of course.
Southwest, very, very pure.
Yeah.
They have 2 different species. They have one species that's for the EPA, another species for the DHA. They mix them together in their pill. Very clean. I've been using that product. I love it.
So I guess the whole point about bioaccumulation is eat lower on the food chain. You know, eat the real foods. Once they start processing foods or animals start, eating food to get bigger, they have to eat a lot of GMO corn and soy to fatten up a cow or, chickens. And then you eat that, you're getting basically the lactame accumulation, the toxins, as well as, the protein from literally the food that the animal ate. So just eat that yourself.
Yeah. So in general, my main thing being, eat as well as you can, but test. I think it's very important to test. I do it once a year. If you're on a low budget, at least once every few years. Once every 5 years if you're on a very low budget. But I think it's essential, the omegas, all the different nutrients. If not, what some studies have shown is certain nutrient deficiencies can cause damage to our DNA, similar to the damage that's done by, actually, believe it or not, nuclear radiation.
Wow.
So nuclear radiation causes single and double strand breaks, and nutrient deficiencies can also cause single and double strand breaks in the DNA.
Yeah, I would definitely concur. I'd like to get tested regularly, and I got to get actually these new tests now to make sure I'm on track. I try to eat a varied diet and eat as many different things in one game I like to play. Is I eat something different today than I did yesterday, and tomorrow I'm eating something different. And every day in my garden I'm harvesting a different kind of green. I just make my way around, so I'm never eating the same exact thing, twice. Let's talk about another thing that I think that could damage DHA, Craig, and it's not underneath my shirt today.
Oh, bad damaged DNA, you mean?
Underneath my shirt it says, every day I'm killing it, which is actually probably helping your DNA, but what are you wearing below your shirt,
Okay,
Craig?
so this is another whole topic.
He's Superman right here.
But this here is not like some fancy silver
It's
shirt.
bulletproof in case the meat eaters find you.
These are silver threads, and it blocks or bounces off most, if not all, of the microwaves. So we all know 5G is coming. It's already here in many places. And many scientists around the world, German scientists got together and put a petition against their government, let's not put the 5G in yet. As the frequencies get higher and higher, more and more possibility of damage. So we know there's some studies we know of already. Lowering sperm count in men, of course. So I have boxers on right now, silver boxers. I don't want to lower my sperm count. I don't like to have a high sperm count. I'm wearing a t-shirt to protect my organs. So that's number one. Number two thing that I bet you none of your viewers here have heard, or very few, is that in China, if a woman is pregnant, she's caught on the street without protective clothing, that's EMF protective clothing like I just showed you, she can get a summons or a fine. So they know over there that these things can have potential damage to the fetus and unborn child. So that is like amazing information. Then another new study, I think there's more than one actually, it's out, that the microwaves from your mobile phones, routers, your smart meters, which the shirts block and the pants block, can lower melatonin production in your brain. You need melatonin to sleep properly. If you're having trouble sleeping, maybe that's it. It's one of the many things that can cause sleep problems. So my wife and I did some readings in our bed. There's a mobile phone tower half-mile away, and it's going right through the wall. On the bed, we're getting a reading that was uncomfortably high. So in Germany, they make a product called Y-Shield paint, and this paint blocks the microwaves from passing through the wall. So we painted the wall and took readings again. The readings were way down. We put a second coat on like they recommended. It really didn't change the readings. They were still low. But what did change was the first night that first coat was on, my wife, bam, slept right through the night. Wow. She had been having problems sleeping on and off, waking up at night, finding it hard to fall back asleep. As soon as we got that on the second night, we put the second coat on, boom, she slept all through the night. So we just recently did this. Things are looking a lot better for her sleep. The white shield paint's a little expensive, but I think it's worth it. And one thing I'll mention, if you are going to paint your room, don't just paint one side unless you have a meter and can take measurements and make sure that it's only coming from one side. Because if you have towers on both sides, and you only saw the one on this side, so you paint this side, well, that tower might be sending stuff in, and then it bounces it back on you, so now you get double exposed by that tower. So most people are recommending do all the walls.
And the roof?
The ceiling possibly too. Especially if you're in an apartment building, they put an antenna on your roof, which is very common. But if you have a meter, and you own a meter, and you could test it and test every once in a while, because obviously they're putting up new meters, new towers all the time. With the 5G, supposedly they're going to put a tower on every block in the cities, because 5G doesn't travel as far and can't get deep into buildings unless the towers are very close together. So all this is coming when, as time rolls into the future, there's more and more things we need to worry about.
Yeah, so I would just say, you want to protect what is most valuable to you, right? And for me, that's my health. And so I need to, I have a few limited undergarments, but I need to invest in more now that Craig knows the right brands to buy.
There are a lot made in China. There's some made in the USA, which I hear have very low silver content. There's some made in the UK, which have a higher silver content. We just did some testing, took the foam on, of course, put it in it, wrapped the shirt around it, or the pants, whatever, and called it. We found that some of them you got to wrap twice, and then it doesn't ring. But you could very easily test it yourself with 2 foams.
So which brand did you like that worked well?
Well,
according to your test
honestly,
thus far?
I don't really remember the brands.
All right.
My wife did the buying, and we did the testing, and
I'll put a link down below if I get that from Craig and his wife.
Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, I want to encourage you guys to protect your health. Whether that's protected from foods you're eating, radiation around you. You could protect your health by, like me, I don't have cell service on my phone. I only use it in Wi-Fi mode, and when I'm at hotels, like today. But at home, I have my Wi-Fi turned off. I don't even have Wi-Fi turned on at my house because I want to minimize my risk. And in my opinion, Wi-Fi is a risk, cell towers are a risk. I mean, EMF, coming out from the walls, from the wires running behind the walls is a risk. So I want you guys to minimize your risk and just be aware of these things if it's important to you to minimize these things, but on the same time, you don't want to be like paranoid about everything in the entire world and become a hermit and live in a cave.
I'll just mention, since you're mentioning EMF from wires and RF from the phone towers, I really like the new Trifield meter, their new digital meter. If you have their old meter that was analog with the needle that went up and down, that cannot measure the new digital microwaves coming from the smart feeders, the routers, the new cell phone towers. So don't take the old meter, put it on RF, and think that you have zero field in your house, because you're going to get a false reading. It's the new digital meter, which I really think is the best bang for the buck.
And how much is that? How was that one?
That's about $150.
All right, that's not bad. So
yeah.
You guys could protect your health.
Very easy to use. I love that meter.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was I got the meter and I put it in front of the router, and the router was right behind the wall where I'm in the kitchen making food. And I'm like, man, I was getting dosed. And that really, it was off the charts. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And because I feel sometimes weird when I was making food, and I think that was totally it. I don't know.
Another really interesting thing about these companies that are supplying routers that you're supposed to rent from them every month, you can't really get a router that doesn't have Wi-Fi if you're renting it from the companies anymore. Mm-hmm. You'd have to go online and find a router, like the Motorola Surfboard is what we have. It has no Wi-Fi, just Ethernet cables. Yeah. But what you can do is you can call the company up and you can have them shut the Wi-Fi off on your router, which I did at my parents' house. Mm. They live in one of these communities where there's no choice. You have to get their router, you pay for it in your community dues, it's a retirement place. But what I found out when I called them up, had them turn it off, I put my meter next to it, it's still emitting. It's not coming up, on the laptop, you look at the networks coming up, it's not coming up anymore, but you bring the meter next to it, it's still emitting. So what I did was I got one of these emergency blankets. They're folded up into a little bag this big. It's like a silver piece of silver foil. They're really noisy, they rattle. Yeah. You can get them for $3 at Walmart or Target or a sporting goods store. And they open up pretty big and just wrap the router in that, and that stops it from going through. That's what we did on the wall behind our bed when I first found it before I bought the Y-Shield paint, but they just don't work as good, and you can only do certain areas.
Yeah, so that's a really easy solution for you guys.
Yeah.
You know, get the Mylar reflective emergency blanket thing.
Yeah.
Cool, Craig. So, any final tips or words of wisdom you'd like to share with my viewers today? Because, you know, I know you've been doing this a long time, as I have, and we've been on our different journeys. I mean, a lot of it's similar, but, you know, we each have our own kind of things we get into.
Stress is a killer.
Yeah.
So don't let anything that we said here today stress you out. Note of these things. Everything takes time. You can't do it overnight. You know, if you did one thing a week, you focused on your day off or days off from work on changing one thing, and slowly over time, if you change too fast, sometimes you can't stay with it anyway. So if you're new to this, a little at a time. And if you've been doing this a while, I'm sure, hopefully you're not stressed anymore. But if you are, breathe deeply, do some anti-stress, stuff, whatever it is for you. And yeah, that'd be my main thing.
Cool. And I'd like to say, you know, I want to encourage you guys to live a peaceful life. So I don't like to think stress-free. I like to think a peaceful life, which is, you know, I'm not putting the operating word stress in. I'm just, how can I live more peaceful and be, you know, live in gratitude and be grateful for what I have, instead of like always like, I don't know. It's just the energy out in the regular world is so different. So anyways, Craig, I know you help people. Oh, the other thing I want to talk to you real quick is, this is next level stuff too, because most YouTube channels don't even talk about this. But before I do, you know, here's the thing I think, right? There's so many different vegans, raw vegans, like going off vegan on YouTube and all this kind of crazy stuff. Think about it, they just got tested once a year. And based on their testing, they could see, oh, I'm deficient in this, I'm deficient in that. I could change what I'm doing, so they don't have to be an ex-vegan, or I don't have to, like, you know, get off the planet. It's because they don't know what the heck they're doing, and they're just eating high fruit, or, you know, who knows what they're doing, and it's not working, and then they just totally flip.
Here's a statistic, okay? A higher percentage of people who eat animal products are deficient in vitamin B12 than if you took the same percentage of vegans.
Yeah.
And it's not just about whether you're vegan or not, it's whether you have the ability to absorb those nutrients out of your food. A lot of people are lacking intrinsic factor, which allows you to absorb the vitamin B12 out of your food. So it's much more than about being vegan or non-vegan. It's about being able to digest, and it's about, these days we're finding DNA has a lot to do with it.
And actually also what exactly you're eating on your specific diet. Anyways, we could talk forever, Craig, but really quick, I want you to give 2 sentences on like DNA testing and nutrition uptake, because I know you've done a lot on that, and most people never even talk about this.
Very important to do these DNA tests in my mind. I found out with myself that I was a non-methylator. I have a double mutation in methylation. You could look up what that is. I have a video on the MTHFR677. And on my wife, we found out that she has a W mutation, which is fairly rare, on the gene that we need, yes, to convert carotenoids into actual retinol. So know about these things. You can run deficient vitamin A and need glasses if you're one of these few people who can't turn carotenoids into retinol. Sorry, more than 2 sentences, but I couldn't help it.
No, that's fine. But so anyways, you know, all these things really can make a huge difference. If Craig would have known this like 20 years ago, he could have changed the supplement he was taking, and then he could have been in a better place than learning now. And same, you know, with his wife, if she knew that, you know, she could eat millions of carrots and she's really not going to create the vitamin A that she needs, but by adjusting and eating the proper source, then she would be fine. And it's the same with you guys, and we're all going on this journey together. I'm glad to have you on the show today, Craig, to kind of share some of this advanced topic information stuff with people. And you know, I don't want you guys to be lost either. You know, now that I learned about all this stuff on John's show today, but now they don't know where to turn and how to get this and implement it in their diet and into their life, so they could make lifestyle changes that could be healthier in the end. I know you do consulting, right, to help people, guide them, to handhold them, to let them know the tests they should get and what to change after, you know, they get the results. So you want to share with people how they can contact you?
Sure. My book, rawfoodsbible.com. That's how you can get in touch with me. And I have a YouTube channel too under my name, Craig Sommers.
Yeah, I'll put a links down below to his website and his YouTube channel. All right, Craig, I think that's pretty much it for today. If you guys out there like this interview with Craig and want me to get together with Craig more in the future, hey, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Also be sure to share this video with as many other plant-based eaters as you guys know so that they could get some of this advanced topic information so that they could continue to be healthy and be the model of what I believe every plant-based eater should be. You know, by just dialing your diet in and taking all the precautions you need to do so that you are not another statistic. Also be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new and upcoming episodes that are coming out about every 5 to 7 days. You never know where else we'll be learning on my YouTube channel. And make sure you click the little bell so you guys get the notifications as my new videos come out. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. My past episodes are a wealth of knowledge, over 500 episodes at this time on this YouTube channel dedicated to teaching guys about eating the healthiest fruit and vegetable dominated diet ever. All right, so with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.